Welcome to Epic Rides, the podcast, brought to you by Fisher Power Sports. I am Noel Lindsay, a photographer and videographer and motorcycle addict based in Manitoba. And I've got my buddy and co-conspirator, Dallas Mitchell, with me. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing awesome. How about you?
Good. Yeah, I'm excited to be down in the studio recording and listening to the crazy latency on my voice while I'm recording this.
That's not distracting at all.
No. So if I start stuttering and you guys hear that out there, it's because I got distracted by my own voice because squirrel. Excited to be doing this, doing episode 2 of the podcast. As I'd mentioned in the first episode, I'm going to mention it again now. Epic Rides Moto Tours has officially launched. We have got 3 rides. We're going to run those twice. We're going to run them in the summer. We're going to run them again in the fall. So we get a little bit of the leave changing and kind of the double season. This is really a litmus test to see if Moto Tours are a possibility or a sustainable thing in Manitoba. I believe they are, because I believe there's a ton of beautiful things about this province that I don't think a lot of people get to check out.
Yeah, I agree. It's a wonderful place to explore and cost-effective way to explore and have new experiences.
Absolutely. And that's part of, like our pricing structure. Really, we're on the lower end of the tour pricing because, what the audience that I'm hoping that we get to come riding with us is, well, I mean, anybody that's listening to this podcast, we want to ride with you. But these tours are really for people who maybe don't have a ton of off-road experience, or maybe they've got that off-road experience, but they don't have a ton of moto camping experience. And we're going to be doing a lot of moto camping. We're going to be doing a lot of exploring. Going to be a lot of gravel roads, with the exception of one route, which is our northern Manitoba route. I don't know how much gravel there's going to be on that one, but I can tell you for sure on our southeast route, which takes us through sandy lands, and we're going to do a bunch of single track trails, riding in the sand. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to drop our bikes a lot and have some laughs. And our other route west through Duck Mountain Provincial Park, where we're going to have a lot of great adventures out that way. It's a lot of highway riding to get there, but then we're on into some serious gravel roads, and it's sort of soft gravel. So it's good to have a little bit of that experience. But if you don't, we go nice and slow. I ride a KLR 650, which for all of you out there that are into motorcycles, who I'm assuming you are, if you're listening to this podcast, you know that that's a donkey way more than it is a cheetah. So it's not like we're going to be racing. But Dallas and Co., who are my compatriots here on the Epic Rides Moto Tours, they're going to be operating the recovery/chase van. And so they're going to be sweeping behind and making sure we don't, if somebody goes down or if somebody has a breakdown or if people are just not liking the pace, they're going to be able to go with you guys, right?
Exactly. It's a nice safety feature, and then allows us to take more equipment and stuff that we need for the moto camping and for the group and for the recordings, right?
Absolutely. And we're going to have a nice fully stocked kitchen. So we're going to make some great meals. And that's a big part of it to me, is we're going to be doing some Dutch oven meals. I love cooking. I love cooking for other people. And while I don't often do a lot of fresh cooking while I'm motorcycle camping when I'm out solo, I do like making those meals when I have the opportunity, when I have something like a chase van or support vehicle following me and I can carry a giant Dutch oven, which I will not put on the bike. So I'm excited to share that with you guys too, because we're going to do a lot of compare and contrast between freeze-dried meals and real fresh meals that are they're called the same thing, right? Like lasagna, you can buy freeze-dried lasagna, but we're going to make lasagna in a Dutch oven, and then we're going to compare and contrast. And I think what you guys will find is that honestly, the freeze-dried stuff is pretty good, but I would call it lasagna adjacent. Not necessarily like a true lasagna, but besides the point. We're gonna do a lot of cooking. We're gonna have a lot of adventures. We're gonna do some hiking. We're gonna potentially do some fishing. Most importantly, we're gonna spend a ton of time on the bikes, exploring and having some laughs and having a great time. So I hope you guys consider joining us on the Moto Tours. If you want to sign up and you want to learn more about the tours, go to epicridesmb.com. You can learn everything there, and you can actually book your trip. So that's the Moto Tours piece. I'm super excited about it. I'm super excited to share it with you guys. Super excited to ride with you guys this year. Which is a great segue for what gets us excited about the upcoming season. And that was a good segue. Wow. I wish I was that good in the first episode. What gets you excited about the upcoming season, Dallas?
I have a couple of things. It's the new routes, obviously, because we had a great season this first year, but we were kind of making up as we went along.
Yeah.
but definitely went to places where I hadn't explored. Like we did some hiking, did some camping, some fishing and whatnot. Yeah. So just doing more of that in different places. And, we were making it up as we went along, kind of learning how to do this as a group and get prepared. We took some people along with us. So we got some tests running in there, but we'll be, it's learning, applying what we learned last year to this year so that preparation is a little bit better. Cause like when we were solo, just like you and the crew, there's a couple times where, yeah, we kind of could have taken this or that, right? But you learn as you go, right? Because not only is it the actual moto camping and exploring and doing the things, we have the whole recording thing too. So which for me, I'm a tech geek, so I love that part, right? So it's an odd blend of nature and tech, right?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up actually, because yeah, I love that stuff too. I'm a huge tech nerd, as you know, and yeah, filming right as a videographer. When we filmed those routes, there was a lot of learning just on the processes, right? Like, I mean, I've filmed short docs for all kinds of people. I've done a lot of commercial work, but trying to figure out a good way to film a motorcycle adventure with you don't necessarily want to have the huge gimbal and the huge camera. I mean, they're nice to have. And, thank goodness we were able to use that quite a bit because we had you guys who were able to take some of that camera gear. But if I was out solo, there'd be no point in me taking that camera gear because
Yeah.
I can't do it. Like I might as well, the easiest thing for me was the GoPros. So having a GoPro mounted on the handlebars, having one on my chin, on my helmet, and then my drone, the old trusty Air 2S to get those nice aerial shots. That was kind of that kind of, we found by the end of the season, those seemed to be the main cameras. And even you guys, I know Nate, your son, who is one of has come on a lot of the adventures and he had expressed interest in learning how to do some camera work. He ended up running a lot of the GoPros on gimbals and stuff. Just he's got a great eye, but also just because space on a motorcycle, even space in the van with a full crew, is a little tight.
Yeah,
we learned a lot. So I'm excited this year to start the season with that knowledge of, okay, I know how we're going to film this. And I've got some ideas of how to improve our quality of filming as well, which just comes with experience. And that's what we learned a lot from last year. I'm also super excited about the new routes. Like beyond the tours, like we're going to be filming pretty well every weekend. We've got a great big expedition planned. We got a lot of great fun riding that we're going to do, and I'm just excited to share more routes. So for those of you who maybe don't necessarily do a tour, we're hopefully going to be able to show you some great spots that you can go check out on your own.
Yeah, exactly. So, like there's tons to do in a lot of these areas. The 6 tours are doing. Yeah, I'm excited about that. Meeting the new people, right? One thing that was really enjoyable was when a couple of your buddies joined us, and meeting new people. And a trip like that is fun when you're with the right people, when you're with more people. Yeah, you learn stuff from them, and it's just fun just sitting around a campfire, right? With new people.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that you come off the ride and it's an intense ride, and maybe you've put yourself outside your comfort zone a couple times, sitting around the campfire and being able to have that sense of community and that everyone's had that shared experience is a ton of fun. And after a day of riding, like a long day of riding, everyone's friends at that point. It's not a bunch of strangers sitting around. Like when we start, and it's awkward, and you're oh, I'm Noel and I'll be doing this, and Bob or whoever is like, I'm Bob and I like adventure bikes and I'm coming on the tour. That's how it all starts, and it's awkward AF. But by the end of the ride, by the end of day one, everyone is laughing and joking and giving each other shit about stuff. And it's just so fun. Like I'm super excited about that. I'm excited about meeting a bunch of new people. I'm excited about sharing my, what I know about camping and moto camping with other people, because as I'd mentioned in the first episode, and I'll say it again here, I'm an experienced backcountry backpacker, canoe adventure, hunter, backcountry angler. So hiking, fishing rods all over Manitoba and Ontario, which I even did. I brought a fishing rod when we did one of our hikes last year for Epic Rides, where there was no lake. I just carried a fishing rod around for about 4.5 hours for no reason, thinking that I would eventually hit a lake. I did not.
And I got to try one of those freeze dried meals. That's one thing I didn't do this past year. So that'll be interesting. I've never had one of those.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We're gonna do a compare and contrast. Yeah, no, it's true. Last year we ate pretty good.
Oh yeah.
Charcoal grilled steaks one night.
Yeah, it's a good thing that I was so unprepared that I had to quickly go run and buy that because our camping barbecue was toast. So finding that out the morning of, I'll be better prepared this year.
Well, now we've got the barbecue put together. Which, by the way, shout out to Danny. He did a lot of work on that thing.
Yeah, you guys did a good job on that. I think I was starting a fire and you and Danny put together the barbecue. So
yeah, well, that's how it started. But by the end of it, I think I just handed him a Leatherman and I was like, "Hey, you go." Just for reference, Danny is Dallas's. Is Danny's younger than Nate, right?
Yes, he's the runt of the litter.
The runt of the litter.
Yeah,
he's a great kid. He was out on a bunch of rides with us as well, and yeah, he's fun. And I'm imagining that both Nate and Danny will probably be joining us on a few of the tours as well.
Yeah, probably most of them. I'm assuming. Nathan, as you know, he loves doing the videography, and Danny he's a little shutterbug. He likes the photography, so put a camera in his hand and he'll go. And yeah, whenever something needs to be done, Danny's like the first one to always volunteer if something needs to get done. So that's good. His brother not so much, but if you sign him a task, he'll go do it.
Yeah, you just gotta remind him, but that's all right.
Yeah.
Most importantly, they're young and they've got energy, and we're old, and so we can all push tasks on Danny and Nate.
Yeah,
Sorry, Danny, that's a nice Nate thing in advance.
That's the nice thing about teenage boys, right? Like once they actually do it, it's good, right? But sometimes a little challenging getting them to do it.
Yeah, well, they just need motivation.
Yeah.
Well, that's the news. That's what I'm excited about. Lots of exciting stuff coming up this year. And kind of the meat and the potatoes of the show today, I wanted to talk about the basics for trouble-free moto camping. So for those of you that have not ever gone before, and maybe for those of you who've done it a couple times but aren't feeling like you've got your kit sort of totally nailed down or don't feel like you're really comfortable with it yet, I wanted to just cover a couple of points here. The first thing I wanted to talk about is leave no trace camping. And this is something that I've been practicing for a long time as a backpacker, as a backcountry guy. There's sort of 7 principles. You can actually find them online. And it's a great way to not affect the environment around you while you're out doing your camping thing. And you can absolutely follow these principles on a motorcycle just as much as you could in a canoe or just hiking into the backcountry. So I want to touch really briefly on them. I'm not going to get into deep explanations because, again, there's great web resources for that. There's sort of 7 tenets. The first is plan and prepare. And we'll talk a little bit about all of these separately, but we'll start with plan and prepare. The next is travel and camp on durable surfaces, dispose of waste properly, leave what you find, minimize campfire impacts, respect wildlife, and be considerate of others. That's the 7 tenets of leave no trace camping. And of course, there's a lot of detail, like what does plan and prepare mean, right? That means looking at the weather. That means making sure you have the right clothing, making sure that you know where you're going and that somebody knows that you're going there, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing that I learned this past year. So that your trip is kind of a success or fail before you ever leave. So Absolutely. If you know what you're doing and you got your stuff, right? Like make a packing list, and check the weather, like you said, much more enjoyable experience when you're actually prepared for what you're about to face.
Well, and that's it, right? And in, Manitoba in the summer, it's beautiful, but as well as I do that you can have some pretty wild storms roll in. And if you're on a motorcycle, you're riding into that storm. If you don't have wet weather gear, you're going to get soaked, you're going to get chilled, you're going to get sick, and it's going to be a miserable trip. So just having that one piece of preparation is going to save you a lot of pain later.
Yeah. And get yourself a posse, because I'm sure having a chase crew with you probably made your life easier.
Oh man, it was the best. It was like the lap of luxury.
There we go.
And then, plan and prepare moto specific, right? Get to know your bike, right? Like you don't necessarily need to know how to tear down and rebuild a motor at the side of the road, but you should definitely spend time to learn the bare minimum. So you should know how to check your tire pressure. You should know how to check check and change your oil, your brake and clutch fluids. You should know how to adjust brake and clutch levers. as well as clutch cables or brake cables, and any of the controls, right? Anything that can get moved around, you should know how to be able to adjust them. You should be able to know how to sort of do a fix, right? So I wouldn't say you necessarily need to know how to replace that cable, but to adjust it so your bike is still operational, we'll say, is definitely something that you should spend the time to learn before you go on a trip. So that kind of falls under plan and prepare. Another big tip is adjust the bars to fit your handlebars to fit you. I see this all the time. Guys buy a bike, they don't change anything, and the bike's uncomfortable. Bikes aren't like cars in that, while you can't change what the steering wheel shape is, you can bring the steering wheel closer to you if you've got little Tyrannosaurus Rex arms. You can push it away from you if you've got big gorilla arms, right? You can adjust the seating position, all that kind of stuff. On a bike, it's kind of very similar, with handlebars especially. Your riding geometry really affects comfort. So your bars should be adjusted to fit you, and you should figure out what that means when I say fit you, right? Go spend some time online for your height, for your arm length, for your torso length, all of that stuff. And then also, if you're going to be doing any of our tours, or if you're going to be out moto camping and you're going to be on the gravel, there's going to be a time to stand up. And with off-road riding, adventure riding in general, yes, there's always a time to sit, but there's always a time to stand up. So your bike should be just as comfortable and you should be just as balanced standing up as you are sitting down. So you should get yourself set up and fit comfortably before you head out. So,
particularly on adventures like that, because there's going into like rustic areas, rural areas, sometimes it's hours before there's a place to actually like stop, stretch your legs and whatnot. You got to keep rolling.
Well, that's right. Like we spend... Well, here in Manitoba, there's just not a bunch of close. It's not like Europe where you've got a town every 10, 15, 20 kilometers. Like it's hundreds of kilometers, right? Like I think about when we were planning the northern route, which I'm really excited about to take you guys on. There was a point where we almost had to change the route because we weren't sure that there was a gas station that would allow us to get from the place that we wanted to, where we were going to start off on one of the day trips, to our destination, because the round trip was 500 and something kilometers with no gas stops. And y'all out there with motorcycles know that your tanks don't, unless you've got some ridiculous 30-liter enduro crazy tank on there, which most of you probably don't, your bike's going to tap out at 350 kilometers ish. If you're lucky. If you got a smaller tank, it's even less, right? So there's not those close places. So yeah, before you go, for sure, that's an excellent point. Like getting comfortable, you just don't have a place to stop. You don't necessarily have a place to mess around where you're going to have all the tools at your disposal and everything else. So figuring that out is super important. So that's kind of point one. That's the plan piece. Gear up. Unlike car camping or RVing, the only thing between you and the elements is your riding gear. I kind of touched on this a little bit about, having your wet weather gear with you, but kind of goes beyond that, right? With motorcycling, it's an inherently dangerous activity. Everyone that rides knows that there is an increased risk of an accident or something, right? And that's, it could be the weather, it could be the road gets wet and you go down. So invest good money in good protective gear. So that's jackets, pants, boots, helmet, gloves. A good jacket, good boots and pants should be waterproof and offer some sort of ventilation, because again, Manitoba plus 30, plus 40 in the heat with the humidex. Yeah, your Gore-Tex gear is great until you are actively in a sauna.
Yeah. So, and this past year we had a trip like that where it was god awful hot.
Oh, we had a couple of them. Yeah. And it was brutal. But the important part was for me is wearing the gear, because that's the only thing that's protecting you from the asphalt. Right. So
yeah,
spending money on quality gear quality protective gear is well worth it. You're never gonna regret spending the money on the safety gear, especially if you go down wearing good safety gear.
Yeah.
Where you can save money is on your camping gear. And this is super important to me because I'm a dad. I've got, 2 kids that like doing things. I've got a house to pay for and, bills just like everybody else out there. I can't necessarily go out and drop $2,000 on the fanciest tent on earth and this and that. So spending the time researching the gear before you buy it and buying something that is good quality but doesn't break the bank, which we'll tie in actually to one of the reviews we're going to do, but I'll just touch on it here, is the Alps Zephyr 2 tent that I've been carrying for years. It's a lightweight 2-man tent, and it has survived some of the most horrific weather I've ever seen thrown at it. I've been in snow with it. It's an incredible tent, and it's great value for the money. you don't need to spend on the specific, moto camping tent that you see online. And that's one of the big things that I want to teach people that a lot of other, YouTube channels, a lot of other tour operators might not touch on is this doesn't need to be the most expensive hobby on earth. It's expensive. Yes. The safety gear is expensive. The motorcycle is expensive. The insurance is expensive. But you can save a little bit on your camping gear if you know what you're looking for. And we're going to share all of that. Now, these are topics that we're going to go into in great detail, on the podcast. In the videos too, we're going to start doing a lot more tips and tricks episodes, which are going to follow along with the podcasts. But you can definitely save money. The one spot that I would maybe spend a little bit more money on is a good sleeping bag and sleeping pad, because it's important, but because it's important to be comfortable when you're out there. But also the cheap stuff tends to wear out real quick. There are some exceptions even there, but the overarching point is you can get yourself totally outfitted for far less than you think you can. And we're going to teach you how to do that in future episodes. So That's my gear up tip piece. The next thing was don't overpack. And this is a challenge that I still have. I mean, I like bringing stuff with me. I like having, some of the toys, but you don't need it, right? If you've ever spent any time on YouTube watching adventure riders, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's that guy that's headed out for a week that has a spare tire, 2 giant saddlebags packed with everything, including a backup tent that you'll never use, a bunch of must-have, quote unquote, camping equipment that you'll never unpack, more food than you'll ever need, and 3 weeks worth of clean clothes. Oh, and then a 100-liter duffel bag on top with a parka, inflatable pool, 4 different types of riding boots, a full-sized gas-powered generator so he can run the tent air conditioner. He's strapped to his fuel tank. Like, that's obviously an extreme and kind of a joke, but it's like if you watch some of those channels, like those guys are going out for shortish rides with an absurd amount of gear. And I'm here to tell you, you don't need it all. Sit back and think about what a full day on the bike and camping actually looks like, right? What do you need? Like, what stuff do you must have? Toothbrush and toiletries, toilet paper, maybe like one of those little battery bank things to charge your cell phone. You need tent, tarp, sleeping stuff, a change of clothes or 2 if you're going for more than a couple of days. Yeah. Because, here's the thing. When you're going car camping, right, you're going to bring your jeans, you're going to pack, a pair of sweatpants, a pair of pajama pants, swim shorts, a pair of shorts, maybe a second pair of jeans. Yeah, you don't have that kind of room when you're backpacking or when you're moto camping, right? So you got to think you're going to spend a lot of time in your riding pants, with the exception of sitting around at the campsite or, potentially doing a hike. So having a good merino base layer that will wick moisture away from you, keep you warm when it's cold and keep you cool when it's warm is far more important than bringing 3 pairs of jeans. So thinking through those kinds of things is where you're going to save a lot of weight. And the best piece of advice I can give, and we're going to actually put up packing lists, and we're going to provide packing lists for anybody that comes on any of the tours. But we're going to share a lot of that information is before you go on your very first trip, lay everything out on the bed or on the floor or wherever, and then half it. Like really look at what you've got. Do you need 14 AA batteries for a 3-day trip? No. Do you need a toothbrush? Probably. If you like teeth, you probably want a toothbrush. Yeah. If you are planning on only eating freeze-dried meals, do you really need to bring the cast iron wok? Right? Look at it. Look at all the stuff you've got out there. Try and half it, but don't go too far into the other way and then not bring something you don't use. The packing piece comes with experience, right? Like, try and start off as light as you can, but take a little bit, you'll end up taking a little bit more than you'll need. It happens, I think, to everybody. I think it's inevitable, and you can start paring stuff down. And I got this great piece of advice off of another podcast that I listened to. And the host was talking about his camping lists. And what he does is he has everything on the list, and he's got 3 markers. He's got red, orange, green. So if he uses it on every trip or uses it multiple times on a trip, it gets a green check mark or a green highlighter. If he uses it once, gets an orange. If it doesn't come out of his panniers, it gets a red, and then it doesn't come on the next trip. And I think that's just a great piece of advice. So I've started to implement that as well. And you'd be shocked at how much you end up shaving off of your trip that you just don't need. So that's the don't overpack piece. Pack your bike properly. I don't care if you got hard or soft luggage. Make sure that you've got the heaviest items packed at the bottom of the bags and closest to the center of gravity, because on motorcycles, any added weight affects the ride of the bike. It affects the feel of the bike. It affects the balance on the bike. And when you're on gravel, that can be a huge thing. If you're super top heavy and your front tire goes squirrely and you just might not have the strength to be able to recover if everything's top heavy, etc. So learning how to pack your bike properly. Again, we're going to offer a whole bunch of great tips and tricks on how to actually pack your bike specifically, but a couple other things to just think about is make sure your bags are balanced out with weight. Try and keep similar items together. So for example, your sleeping bag and clothes can live in the top duffel bag. They're way next to nothing and they're soft, and you know that both your clothes and your sleeping bag are going to end in your tent. So you might as well have them there. Better have them there than packed with your tire patch kit that's at the bottom of your pannier and you can't reach it. So that's kind of the pre-trip stuff that I like to look at. A couple of the things that I want to touch on as well are what happens when you arrive at your campsite. And the first thing is choosing a campsite, right? So a lot of people, I don't think, spend a lot of time thinking about this, especially if they're in a registered campground, right? Like you go to one of the provincial campgrounds and your spots are your spots. Some are going to be better than others, but for the most part, they're all going to be fairly reasonable. This is more, if this is your first backcountry trip, if you're pulling off the side of the roads, there's some certain key things to think about. And that's stay away from standing water, because what comes with stagnant, gross standing water? Bugs. All the bugs, mosquitoes, millions of them.
Yeah.
Find a level place to set up your tent. If you can't find perfectly level ground, set your tent in a direction that keeps your head higher than your feet. And this is a big mistake that I know that I used to make all the time, especially as a young 20-year-old or something. We be out camping with the buddies and, you don't think about it. You were too busy worrying about partying. So you throw your tent up and crack the beer, right? And then you end up with the blood rushing to your head, or you've got a huge lump in the middle of your tent or something. And it just makes your night miserable. And then you're exhausted the next day and it sucks. So yeah, on that note, avoid rocks, anthills, high grass where possible, because high grass, especially in the spring in Manitoba, that's where ticks like to live. And wood ticks are sucky. I don't like them. Just not a fan.
You don't like Lyme disease?
I know. I've got this weird thing against it. So yeah, find a good durable place, and finding a durable place to camp. That's another tenet of our 7 leave no trace principles. So finding that durable, packed dirt or shorter grass that you're going to find, especially if you're in the forest, right? Like you don't have all of that long grass usually. Those are kind of a couple of nice, easy things to implement. Parking your bike is another thing to think about, right? You want to find a spot that's out of the way. That way you don't trip over it constantly when you're moving around. And this is, again, something that happens on almost every trip. Is even in registered campgrounds, you pull your bike in, you unload your camping gear, you find the nice flat spot, and then you have to move your bike, because the nice flat spot is probably a foot away from your bike, and you've got it parked the wrong way, so the bike could fall over potentially and land on your tent, which is something you obviously don't want. So
particularly if you're in it.
Yeah, particularly if you're in it.
So 500 pounds coming down on you?
Yeah. On my bike, my old bike, 598 pounds or so wet and loaded. It's a lot of weight. And then on that note, when you're figuring out where to park your bike, finding level ground with firm soil. Even if you have an extension on your side stand, there's nothing worse than being woken up by the sound of your bike falling over. I've had it happen.
Yeah.
It sinks into the soft ground, or the ground isn't as firm as you think it's going to be, and it slowly sinks, and then it loses its center, or it loses its balance, and just over it goes. And then you break off a lighting turn signal or something, and it's annoying and expensive
and unnecessary,
and totally unnecessary if you just spend a couple of minutes. Yeah. And then the other piece of the where to park your bike, before you set up your tent, I like to check the bike over. I would rather set up my tent in the dark than try and change the oil in the dark. So go over your bike, make sure there's no oil leaks, make sure that the chain tension's good, tire pressure's good. Just those little basic maintenance things. Your battery's okay, nothing's loose. I like to do that before I set up my tent, before I get comfortable for the night. Because that way the next morning, your bike's in good shape. You're not going to be wasting a bunch of time. You're just tearing down and you're going. So that's my my bike piece. And the only other couple of things I wanted to touch on really was knowing how to set up your gear before using it, right? And I touched on this. Did I touch on this episode, or was it last episode? I was talking about learning how to use your camp stove before you go out. much in the same way, it's like learning how to set up your tent, right? Like you don't want to figure out your tent in the dark when it's raining or it's cold or you're tired or whatever. You better just go set up in your backyard, take it to a park or something and throw it up and take it down and learn how to pack it down a couple times. So you're all familiar with it. And barring that, have somebody
learning how to do it
with you.
Yeah. Learning how to do it after a day of driving and you're wiped. It doesn't seem like it'd be fun.
No, it's it can definitely be miserable. So yeah, having that, and that goes with anything. If you're buying a specific piece of gear, know how to use it before you go out. So you can save a whole bunch of preamble, and we can go with that. And the final thing I want to touch on here, let me just look at my notes. Yeah, the final thing I just want to talk about camp cooking a little bit. I'm a fan of keeping cooking simple on the trail. This usually means freeze-dried meals like those offered by Mountain House or Backpacker's Pantry. You've seen me eat those things instead of carrying some fresh food around. And the reason for it's they're easy to pack, they taste good, and they give you a huge calorie boost when you need to keep your energy up, which is, off-road riding is a very physical activity. It burns calories, camping burns calories, hiking burns calories. So a nice calorie dense meal for dinner is just a good thing to have. But just as importantly, they're super easy. So if you arrive to your campground exhausted, it's however long it takes your stove to boil water. You throw the water in the bag, seal the bag, wait 15 minutes, and you're eating. And then you've got very little waste. And you can very easily pack that out with you, which is, again, part of that 7 tenets of leave no trace camping. Bring your crap out with you.
Yeah.
So having said that, I don't carry a ton of cooking utensils for the most part. Like I'll bring a stainless steel cooking pot. And it's stainless steel because it can handle the high temperatures of being put over a fire, like a thin aluminum camping pan. Well, yeah, you're going to save a couple of grams here and there. You can warp and melt the pans over open fires, especially when there's prolonged direct heat. So nice stainless steel cooking pot. You can boil water and it takes a beating and they're great. The next thing I like to carry around is a long-handled spork because it keeps my grubby hands from getting even grubbier when scooping food out of a meal package. Because I don't like to bring a plate if I don't have to. I just, like an animal, just dig into the package. Camp stove, it's great for cooking when I can't have a fire. Usually when there's a fire ban due to drought or it's, crapping rain out and I'm just too lazy to get a fire going. Just a fast way to boil water. If you're going to go out and buy your first stove, I would highly recommend something like the Jet Boil system. It boils water in something like 60 seconds from cold, which is amazing. I don't have that. I have what's called an Optimus Polaris single burner stove, which packs down and it'll use any fuel on earth. Like it'll run off of diesel without having to change the jetting or worry about pressurized fuels that lose that high pressure in the cold, right? So propane, for example, right? You lose pressure when it's cold out and then the stove doesn't operate correctly and whatever. But I bought mine for doing a lot of backcountry winter stuff, but I wouldn't buy it for motorcycle camping. It's not the ideal stove, but it's the one I have, so I use it.
Yeah, there you go.
And at the end of the day, it's light enough to pack up tiny and it boils water just fine. And like I said, that's the kind of basic stuff that I like I don't want to carry a bunch of extra stuff. If I am going to carry extra stuff, it's pretty minor. Like I'm going to bring maybe a spatula and a little steel fry pan or something so I can do a fish fry or cook up some red meat or something. And then I'll add a little container of salt, pepper, garlic powder, onion powder like that. But not much more than that basic packing kit.
Yeah, just a couple of incidentals for whatever you're planning, right?
Yeah, exactly. And a little spice kit, you'd be surprised what you can do with salt, pepper, onion powder, and garlic powder.
Yeah.
Make just about anything taste good.
Pretty much, yeah.
So, yeah, it's a good thing to have with you, and it doesn't take up a lot of room. And then as far as water, I have a 1 liter Nalgene water container, holds a liter of the good stuff, and it's damn near indestructible. To go along with that, it really depending on where you're going. Like in Manitoba, you're not going to find a ton of times when you're on road or even on the gravel tracks where you can't find fresh water. But that being said, for example, the North Whiteshell is under a boil water advisory. Their water is considered non-potable, even though it's safe. But I still carry a little water filtration device. It's called the Sawyer Mini Water Filtration System, and it removes 99.99999% of all bacteria and protozoa like Giardia, which is beaver fever, right?
Yeah.
So it gives you and almost unlimited safe drinking water. And it's just a nice thing to have with you. It's tiny, it's light, and then you don't have to carry, your entire weekend's worth of water with you. You just have your 1 liter. You can fill it at camp, fill it out of a puddle if you need to.
Yeah, water is heavy. So particularly when you don't have much room, when you're limited for space anyways, taking that filtration system and a bottle and a salt, like a good bottle to hold it. Yeah, that's kind of a must have.
Yeah, it's well worth it. And there's a whole bunch of different styles of those filtration systems. There's like the platypus. It's a gravity system. So it has a 4-liter bag that you hang from the tree with the dirty water, and then a hose with a filter in the middle that runs down to your clean water bag. And that's a great group camping solution. But for just your own personal one, like those little Sawyer mini things are amazing.
Your personal one that you use there, how quickly does it filter the water?
You can do a liter in about 2 minutes.
Oh, nice. Yeah, so
it screws onto this little bag, a 1 liter bag, and so you screw it on there, and then you just squeeze the bag to push the water into your Nalgene, and it forces it through the filter. When it's dirty, It takes longer. When it's clean, it takes less. So it depends on the quality of the water that you're pushing through.
Yeah.
The last big backcountry trip I did last year, or the year before, boy, it's been feels like it was only last year, but it might have been the year before now that I think about it. We did 10 days in the backcountry, like deep backcountry in Manitoba, moose hunting by canoe, and we relied solely on the water filtration systems to have fresh water, and we were in an area where there was no other option. So you would be filling from everything from beaver ponds to lakes to rivers to whatever. So having that filter was, you needed one. It was mandatory. And on days where you were filling out of a beaver pond, that you would lose that pressure, or that it would take longer to fill your bottle than it would if, out of a nice clean lake. So yeah.
Because there's just more stuff in it that it has to filter. So
yeah, more particulate that's got to go through, and it's easy to backwash the filter as well. Like you can get it comes with a little backwash syringe thing you just throw in your bag, and use fresh water out of your container and just fire it the opposite way through the filter, and it blasts out all of the particulate and junk that collects in there. And
nice.
You got unlimited fresh water, which is a nice touch.
Yeah,
now,
easy
if you're
peasy.
coming on the tour, well, we have a van, so you don't have to carry all of your water on your back.
Yeah, we have storage in the van, so
right. So that's kind of what I wanted to touch on in terms of in terms of the basics for moto camping. I think we covered everything. We talked about the gear. We talked about a couple of tips. I think it was everything.
There's a lot of good stuff in there.
Yeah. That was a densely packed section of the show. What's it called? Segment.
There we go.
Yeah.
I was drawing a blank too.
What's that?
I was drawing a blank too.
But it's a good segue, because in talking about all of that stuff, it brings us to what I wanted to talk about in terms of reviews today, and that is the Alps Zephyr 2 tent. I got mine several years ago now, off of Amazon. It was $200 ish, which, if in the world of backcountry backpacking tents, that's very, very, very reasonable. And it's a great quality tent. I've used it in all 4 seasons. It packs up small. It has never let me down in terms of being waterproof. The screen is, I think it's called a midge screen. Like it's a really, really tiny diameter of screen, so it doesn't let any bugs in.
Yeah.
Which is nice. The only piece that you kind of have to buy extra, because it comes with the fly, is the tent footprint. And are you familiar with what a tent footprint is?
I am not.
So it's just basically, back in the good old days, we just used a tarp. We'd put it under the tent so rainwater couldn't, seep into the floor. With backpacking tents, a footprint basically just gives you some added protection against rocks and pointy sticks and that, so you don't pierce the floor of your tent or compromise it in any sort of way. So, suddenly you have water or bugs being able to get in there. And it acts as a tarp. If you get a ton of rain, it keeps the rain from the bottom of the tent, which keeps your tent dry.
Nice. Yeah, because you get water in your tent and it takes forever to get it out. And you're going to deal with it for the rest of your camping trip.
Yeah, it's miserable. You need a full day in the sun to dry it out. And I've been on trips where things have gotten wet. Your sleeping bag get wet, and it's just miserable. But then it's an adventure.
There we go.
But yeah,
that's a spin you want to put on it, then great.
Yeah, well, hey, optimism, right?
Yeah.
No, the Zephyr 2 again, available on Amazon, and just over $200 with the footprint. So just make sure you get the footprint for the right size tent. And I would highly recommend getting the 2-man instead of the 1-man, because when I think of tents, 2-man means 1-man, 3-man means 2-man, 4-man means 3-man.
Yeah.
Because unless you are really close with your camping partner.
Yeah. I've seen I think we have a 5-person tent. It's like, gonna have to fold people up to get 5 in there. It comfortably sleeps 3.
Yeah. Well, and all your gear too, right? You want a place to put your gear. And the Alps, that's a nice thing about the Alps, is it's got the fly sort of extends out, which gives you a decent little alcove to sort of, you can keep your boots underneath that, and any other stuff that you don't want getting wet in case it rains, you can kind of shove them under there, and it keeps everything nice and dry.
Yeah,
and it folds down small. So I highly recommend that for a first time good quality moto camping tent, because it's not fancy, but it works.
Yeah, and I think we show it in the Falcon Lake episode.
Yeah, I think it's in the West Hawk one, and then you definitely see it at the
West Hawk one. Yeah.
And in fact, the Nunavik one, I think I do a little bit of a short tour through it. So go and check that YouTube video out, because you can see it in action there. And no joke, that tent has put up with a lot. It's been through a lot, and it's never failed me. So I highly recommend them. And the tent poles are aluminum, I believe. So they're not the lightest things in the world, they are pretty tough.
Yeah, they can take a hit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm a fan. And so that's the review for the week. I guess all that's left is a safety share. And this is really simple and short. Keep your head up. When you're on the road, we live in a province with absolutely terrible, abysmal, I will say, road maintenance. So between falling into potholes or hitting a tar snake, that all of that is a very real possibility.
Yes.
So not staring down at your gear cluster, your instrument cluster, and not looking at the first 3 feet in front of your wheel. Keep your eyes, keep your head up, keep looking for obstacles in the road, because you will find them in Manitoba. Yeah. Another one of the obstacles that we have that's kind of unique to an area with a lot of agriculture are those big mud smears that happen in the spring and in the fall when farmers are getting back onto their fields. And that stuff it can be deadly. And in fact, it proved to be deadly this year, where a man was out for a ride. And while he saw that muddy surface coming up and he slowed down, it wasn't enough to keep him on his bike. And he sadly, he ended up sliding out, losing control, and he got hit by an oncoming car and tragically killed him. But while I think that he did everything he could in that case to protect himself, it's just one of those, keep your head up type scenarios that, there was a lot of riders who were keeping their head up behind him because they saw what was happening. They were able to slow down in time. Yeah. And they were able to save themselves. So that's just an example of keeping your head up. Another keep your head up example is deer. And in this province, again, we got a ton of white-tailed deer. And a lot of the roads we ride on are fairly remote. So there's deer everywhere, right? Like I even think of going Milner Ridge Road, which we call Deer Alley, between Lac du Bonny and Highway 44.
Yeah.
Highway 44 at Seddons.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, that's a very heavy deer activity corridor. Dallas, you and I have driven that road. I don't remember why. Oh, I was staying in a hotel in Beausejour. That's right.
Yeah, Canada Day.
Back.
Yeah. Well, nobody wanted you on your bike at night there, so it's like I'll just drive you. So yeah. I was the DD, and then everybody else drank.
That's right. And we saw how many deer coming back there.
Oh,
a couple times we had to lock them up.
Yeah, we're on that highway for maybe 30 minutes,
max
20 minutes. Yeah, and at least 2 dozen.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and
that we saw, right? And there was at least one where we had to slam on the brakes. Yeah. And then a guy in front of us hit a deer. Remember, we saw that pickup truck just before Beausejour. He was pulled over right on. He had just pulled over. We had watched him actually go off to the side, and so he was okay, but because he had people coming. But it doesn't take much. The deer wasn't. No, but Yeah, but
it's just
if he had been on a bike, then it would have been bad.
Yeah, if he was on a bike, that could have been fatal. Absolutely. And there's a lot of cases of bikers losing their lives or being very badly injured because they hit a deer. So it's just keep your head up, keep your wits about you. That's the safety share for the week. So with all that being said, we have covered the basics of moto camping. We talked about what we were excited about. We talked about our safety share. We talked about the tours. And the only thing left to do is to remind people that we do have a YouTube channel. We've got a ton of routes there. We are going to have more routes being posted there this year. We have a whole second season going out. We're going to be doing an expedition, a whole bunch of fun stuff. To find us on YouTube, simply search at Epic Rides MB. We are also on social media. So we're on Facebook, kind of on TikTok. I got to get better at that one. And Facebook, of course. All three of those are at Epic Rides MB as well. And finally, if you want to learn more about the tours, if you want to watch any of the rides, if you want to read any tips and tricks, which will be on the website, it's epicridesmb.com.
And all the social links are there too.
And the social links are there. That's right. And so give us a like and a follow on those. Subscribe on the YouTube channel. I have a goal to hit quite a few, to really grow that community this year.
Yeah.
So please do go check that out and subscribe and like the videos and interact, comment. If you disagree with anything you hear or see, let me know so we can fight about it.
There we go. Oh, well, hey, different points of view. It's all good, right? That's one of the beautiful things about the internet.
Exactly.
Not every conversation has to be like Twitter, where it's just zero to name calling, right? We can have different opinions. That's okay.
Right. We're all grown adults here. We can have different opinions.
I don't know about the first part, but
yeah. Well, I mean, we've been aging like,
there we go,
like adults, but yeah, mentally, a bunch of children.
Yeah.
Anyways,
that's what makes the motor tours fun.
That's right, and they will be fun. The final note. Moto tours this year, man, they're going to be just a ton of fun. Like we're going to experience all kinds of different terrain. We're going to experience a bunch of the most beautiful places Manitoba has to offer. And I just can hardly wait to share them with you guys.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Absolutely. And with that, we've come to the end of the episode. Thank you for sticking with us. Next week, we are going to be delving deep into ultralight camping sort of mindset for moto camping. We're going to do some tips and tricks. We're going to do another gear review. And yeah, we're going to share some other fun safety tips. So definitely come back. And depending on where you're listening to this, if you're on YouTube, give us a subscribe. If it's on the Apple Podcast thing, give us 5 stars.
There we go.
Perfect. All right. Until next time, take it easy.
See you next week.